In the mid-1940s, while prejudices and struggles persisted, national attitudes towards immigration were warming in significant ways. As part of a statewide effort to relieve wartime stress and promote understanding between cultures, the International Institute of Boston helped organize and sponsor a fall folk festival at its former headquarters, the Boston YWCA. Over 2 days, 200 Bostonians gathered to witness demonstrations of folk arts and crafts and performances of lively music and dance from a wide variety of immigrant communities. The Fall Folk Festival would grow into the New England Folk Festival, which would be sponsored by IIB for the next 25 years. With the end of the war, many Bostonian immigrant soldiers returned home to new opportunity. The Servicemen's Readjustment Act, later known as the GI Bill, provided millions of European immigrant veterans with loan guarantees for home mortgages, money for college or vocational school, and unemployment compensation. IIB helped many of them out of poverty to buy their first home in the U.S. IIB also welcomed the returning soldier spouses from the countries in which they had served, helping them with immigration, legal, and naturalization services, and bringing them together for mutual support in an overseas wives club. With the passing of the Federal Displaced Persons Act of 1948, for the first time, the U.S. granted entrance to immigrants forced from their home countries and prevented from returning for fear of violence or persecution. It was expanded to accommodate Jewish refugees in 1950. This bill led the U.S. to admit an initial 400,000 displaced persons of the 7 million displaced by the war, with the condition that they find a place to live and a job. Between 1948 and 1952, IIB led the way in resettling 10,000 displaced persons in Boston, sending interpreters to meet them at the Boston Harbor, finding sponsors to help more than 200 individuals with housing and employment, and providing support services. Other notable recipients of support were 3 Ravensbrück rabbits, women who had survived medical experiments in a Nazi concentration camp in Poland, and who came to Boston seeking reconstructive surgery. IIB provided these brave survivors with housing, interpretation, and financial support. In 1951, the International Institute also coordinated the Special Project International Refugee Organization, SPIRO, which resettled more than 40 families of displaced people who had disabilities or other challenges requiring special support. The same year, IIB expanded its English language classes to serve 2,500 displaced people, and a grant from the Ford Foundation enabled IIB to provide both English classes and job training for more than 600 immigrants from Russia and the Ukraine. These new arrivals, along with refugees from China and Eastern Europe, were admitted under the Refugee Relief Act of 1953, which authorized visas for those fleeing communist countries. While continuing its cultural and casework, IIB also returned to addressing workforce issues. In 1946, IIB successfully advocated for the Massachusetts Fair Employment Act, which established the Fair Employment Practices Commission. A huge win for immigrant rights in Boston, the new commission could enforce laws prohibiting employment discrimination on the basis of race, color, religious creed, national origin, or ancestry, and in 1950, its mandate was extended to include housing and public accommodations. IIB also continued to advocate for fairness in immigration policy at the federal level. In 1952, IIB's third executive secretary testified before Congress in opposition to the discriminatory and ultimately adopted racial and national origin quota proposed in the McCarran-Walter Act, which set limits by country on the number of immigrants that could be admitted into the U.S., heavily favoring those from Northern and Western Europe. Today, the International Institute and our supporters continue the legacy of advocating for fair immigration and employment policies and necessary resources for refugee resettlement, while working to make Boston a home for the displaced and the persecuted.